Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to do part two of Falsehoods Programmer. Today we're going to do part two of Falsehoods that programmers believe about projects. And we should keep that in there because it's funny.
Yeah. It's natural.
Natural. Last time, on my personal blog, Sherman on Software, I published a list of 20 falsehoods that programmers believe about projects. And these are not always false, but they are not all. It's not that they're always false. It's just that they're not always true.
Right.
So go back and listen to part one if you'd like, or just jump in right now. So this group of projects going in with. So we talked in the first part. We talked about how projects may or may not have defined beginnings or ends, and you may or may not ever know when you should be working on them, and it may or may not be clear to yourself or to other people whether you should be working on them. Today, let's start off with number 10. So, a falsehood, because it's often true but not always true, that the project will solve the stated problem. I have...
No, you saw me getting ready to respond.
Yes, I
Yeah, the project will solve the problem. I guess that's the intent. The assumption. I can totally see you building something new or creating a different problem for yourself.
Well, I've worked on many projects over the years where the developers delivered exactly what was asked. And it did not solve the problem at all. And the people who had asked for the project got upset, and the whole thing was just thrown away and never put into production because it didn't actually solve the problem. This is common when you've got a game of telephone going on. So someone in leadership or someone needs something. They need a tool. And so they tell it to a product person or a project person, and they bring it to you, and you develop the tool that you get asked for. And everyone's like, yeah, this is great. And then you show it to the actual people who are going to use it or who asked for it, and it's the wrong thing.
Yeah. So the telephone game is, or another way I've said this is like, it's just a bad feedback loop. So you end up, I've definitely worked on projects before where someone's like, you should build this thing. It would be a cool idea. And when I say cool idea, this is like companies that have extra money that want to do like research and development. And they're like, well, we should try this out. And so you build that product, but you don't really have a user in mind. You don't have a user story. You're just building kind of at the whim of the person who contacted you and said, hey, let's try to build this thing. So I've done that before, and I would be confused. Like, okay, well, I can build the thing. I can make it where you can upload this thing, or you can have this nice view of your data that you've uploaded. But I don't know how this person uses it day to day. Am I building a useful thing? Because I could build acceptance criteria all day. I just want to build something someone uses. And so it's very difficult. You have to bridge that gap and make sure you're talking. Like, I wouldn't even start working on a project until I understand how the user would use it. I don't want to build something that no one uses. It's really disheartening.
Yeah, I'd even go one step further and say I wouldn't start work on a project until I talk to the people who are going to use it and verify everything that I got told by the intermediates. Because having been burned on this is the one that I get burned on the most, is everyone is acting in good faith, but until you actually talk to the people who are going to use the thing, I don't have any faith that you're actually going to build the right thing, right? Because everyone's imagining different things and using different words.
Right.
And great example of this. I got asked to make contacts in a CRM exportable into Outlook. And there's a file format for this. It's called ICO. It's an old format developed for the Palm Pilot way back in like 2000. And if you set your HTTP response type to ICO and you return some XML, Outlook or any contact system will be happy to import it. Okay. And so, I got asked, I did it, and I showed, I did lots of tests, clicked the buttons, and I showed it to the user, and they were super disappointed because what they really wanted was they wanted to export the notes in which they had all kinds of PII, because the system wouldn't
Ooh.
let them export PII. And my thing didn't let them export PII. But what they wanted was the contact notes to get exported to get
Right.
around the PII things. And so they were very disappointed in the
I can
project.
imagine, and rightly so.
Yeah, because it's not that I couldn't solve it; it's that I wouldn't solve that
Right. Yeah.
problem. um, so yes, that
Nice.
was just an example from my past. So number 11,
Okay.
the project will solve a problem. So this is going back to your statement of, oh, we're going to do some R&D, and you're going to do this project, and we think it will make things better, or
Yeah.
we think this will be a
Or solve
project.
a problem.
It
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
solve
Like
a
you said.
problem, right? I've worked on many problems that didn't solve any problems.
Or projects. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this reminds me of a company I worked at like 10 years ago. They wanted, rather, the CEO came to me and was like, "Hey, look at these really cool designs." And he would show me, like whenever you go to see like React examples or MUI
Mm-hmm.
examples, and they have this whole dashboard built out with like widgets and charts and pie charts, graph charts, like all these kind
Mm-hmm.
of things. And it's like this whole command center example, like this is what your dashboard could look like at your company if you're going to like look and buy components or things like that. I don't know if you've ever seen that from Theme Forest or Envato or any of these companies that do that.
Sure, it's almost like if you ever look at a font where like they show you
Mm-hmm.
everything because they're
Yeah,
they're not using it, they're showing it to you because
how it could be used. Yeah,
right,
and so
these are all the things.
right, so he looks just like, whoa, well, let's make our dashboard look like that, because it looks so cool and enticing. And I'm like, well, we could do that, but like, what is it like? What kind of data is it showing to you that you need every day? Like this pie chart over here, if I use this component, it's going to be empty because I need to know what data to represent in the pie chart.
Mm-hmm.
if we just take all the stuff here and move it to our system, this will be an empty board because we don't have it mapped to anything useful to you. I can make it look like that, but like, what problem is it solving? But it
Yeah.
just looked cool and exciting. It was like fresh colors or like a brand new box of crayons, and you're like, whoa, what can I draw in
Yes.
this? But like, what's the problem? Are you buying it for the sake of just having the colors available? Yeah.
Next up, the project won't make the problem worse. I don't know if
Ooh.
you've ever had this one but I've definitely been involved in projects where there was a stated problem. We implemented the requested solution, and it made the problem worse.
Mm.
There was a UI usability issue. The product people said this is what we want to change the UI to. We changed the UI, and then the usability issue was worse.
Yeah, I don't have an example of this one off the top of my head. I'm sure I've worked on a project that's done this. Um, I've worked with projects that just didn't go into development, but ones not ones that maybe succeeded and were even worse than before. Not off the top of my head. I bet someone's gonna be like,
Hmm.
Isaac, don't you remember it working together? At
Yes.
your last company and that disastrous thing. But I don't
Right.
remember one right now.
And all of these are feedback loop problems. These are all
Yeah.
problems where if you were if you were delivering in an iterative manner and you were actually working with the end user,
Hmm.
you would know that you had a problem very, very quickly and you could fix it. And
Right.
when you get into when these become disasters for you, it's because your project wasn't iterating and you didn't show you to use the terms you had too much work in progress, and by the time you showed the end user all of the work in progress, it was too late to
Right.
correct.
If anyone's surprised your feedback loop is not tight enough.
Yes. Yeah. Next up, everyone on the project agrees what problems the project is supposed to solve.
That's definitely not true.
Yes. If you
Yeah.
by the end of your first year as a professional programmer, hopefully you know this, or if you don't know this after your first year, you have been incredibly lucky.
Yeah. Most developers I've worked with, especially junior ones, just work on what they're told to work on. They don't ask questions. They don't know what they're solving for.
Mm-hmm.
They know they finally got a job out of college and it pays money, and they know I just work on this ticket in front of me. And it takes some time to kind of start asking the questions of like, or pushing back and saying, why do you want to work on this? because that's not the first instinct, right? Like especially when you're not used to having a boss in your younger in your career, and like you think, okay, well, I should do whatever they tell me to do because that's me being a good employee. It's not you being a good employee.
No.
It's actually bad. You should ask questions and push back, but it's not intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely different than like being a factory. Well, even factory workers should push back and ask. But yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, everyone agrees about what solving the problem means. I've had
Mm-hmm.
an example of this to be very technical is, oh, well, if there's something goes wrong, like say you're importing data and somebody says, oh, well, we need to handle failures.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And you start a project to handle failures. Like, well, maybe some people think handle failures means you handle them gracefully and you write a log error or you alert the user. And other people are like, no, you retry. And
Right.
until everyone agrees on what the solution is, or don't just assume that because people have used words and everyone nodded their head,
Right.
that means everyone actually agreed on what everyone thinks they've agreed. But again, until you produce something and it's not what they expected, then you haven't actually, you don't know that you've agreed.
Right. Still the feedback thing.
Still feedback. This is all feedback loops.
Yeah, I feel like you've told me something similar with like having to say something 7 times before people finally get it through their heads. Essentially, some quote you gave me a while back, and it's the same thing. Because if you're in a meeting for the first time, talking about something, maybe half the people there are just kind of nodding, going, "That makes sense, yeah, sure," or they're not really thinking about it. They're just, or maybe they're still switching context from the last meeting. And some people get the message, some people don't, and you kind of really have to make sure everyone's aligned with it. Say it a lot. In an hour, say, okay, the thing that we talked about, remember, this is the problem, the main problem, and maybe tag people in it. And it's just a lot of poking and making sure over and over again that people are, pretty aware of what they're solving. Because I've been in a lot of meetings where people just say, yeah, that sounds good. No other feedback.
One that just popped into my head, you say, oh, this thing needs to export all the data. And people don't agree on what all the data means. Is it like all the current data? Is it all the data plus the history? Does it maybe you don't include the PII?
Yeah, or maybe the customer that complained about a different aspect of all the data, or wanted different pieces, like you're talking about, the notes or something that come out of there. And then we go, oh, we get it, but we don't really get it. And then we build something that solves the problem that does export data, but it still doesn't solve the customer's problem because it still misses one little thing they needed.
Right.
These are all things that need to be constantly reminded, and bring the user in, make sure we're building the right thing for them.
Right. And again, these are all feedback loop problems. Iterate, deliver early, deliver often, and not that you won't have these problems, but just they will be more manageable.
Yeah.
So number 15, solving the problem will make the project a success.
What's a case that wouldn't? Let's see. You actually did solve the problem. So why would the project still fail? Interesting.
Yeah, because, for example, the people who sponsored the project had a different vision of what the solution should be. So you get into this where somebody's expecting to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Or like, hey, we want to solve the problem, but we want to solve it in a way that produces a building block for the next solution. And that second half gets lost. And so you solve the problem in a way that makes solving the next problem harder.
Okay. Yeah,
For instance,
I guess that one's a bit tricky. It's more semantics for that one, because then you're kind of exploding the scope of what the problem is.
Well, an example that I have encountered, somebody wanted to, we needed a streaming system, and so we used a streaming system, and in this case, we were on AWS, and AWS's default pub sub is SNS SQS, and so we set it up with SQS SNS because that was we set up with the AWS's default tools, solved the streaming problem. It worked perfectly well, and then the person came back and was the project owner came back and they were upset because they had wanted Kafka. But they didn't say
Okay.
Kafka. They just assumed Kafka. So I solved the
It's a bold
problem,
assumption.
right?
Okay.
I had solved the problem, right? The project was trying to solve a problem. I solved the problem, but I solved it in a way that didn't make them happy.
Hmm.
Because of externalities that were not stated. So
Right.
with this one, it's be aware that there are possibly, and even probably requirements that aren't stated.
Yeah.
Or requirements that are external to the problem that people want. And if if you're unaware of them, you probably won't solve them. And then your project won't be full of success.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um,
Makes sense to me.
yeah. Number 16, the flip side of this, not solving the problem will make the project a failure.
Hmm.
I have solved, or I have done many projects where I looked at it and I said, we don't need to solve this problem. We can do something else. And then the problem doesn't go away, but it stops being important.
This sounds familiar. Fast lane work.
Fast lane work.
Uh, Basically, at a prior company with Jeffrey, there was a goal to send, I think it was 1.25 or something like that million per hour for a particular, for the biggest client, 1.25 million emails per hour, and the bottleneck was like 700,000 an hour at the time. And the idea was to build this huge project, which we discussed in a separate episode, episode 4, I think, Nozomi, to build something to solve that sending problem.
mm-hmm.
And instead, we kind of found a bottleneck in the code that we optimized that also hit that same goal. So there's still a problem with the campaign sending piece of it. Probably could still be rewritten, but the main Q3 goal or whatever it was to actually hit that particular number everyone was fixated on.
Right. And I don't know that we optimized so much as we realized we could skip that entire code path.
Yeah. Well, they're still optimizing.
I guess it's we optimized by skipping the code path.
Yeah. We were doing a bunch of computationally expensive things that we did not need to, but
Right.
it was still a good discovery. And then
in this particular case, we didn't need to do it, so we didn't do it, and that fixed the performance problem.
Right. So it didn't necessarily say we shouldn't have rewritten part of that engine. Now we know never rewrite. But at the time,
Mm-hmm.
it just more of like what you're talking about. It just deprioritized that because the whole point was to hit that particular number. And now that we hit it in a different way, there was not as much pressure on that particular project anymore. So interesting.
Yeah.
It's definitely happened.
Definitely has happened. So just continuing along the same trend, there is a relationship between the project's success and the status of the problem. So just to be fully here, solving the problem or not solving the problem and having a successful project or not having a successful project are not tightly coupled.
Right.
And that will seem very strange, but just be aware that those two things are, it's not that they're completely unrelated, but it's like correlation. There is no causation between the two.
Right. Yeah. These are the assumptions that can be false.
Right.
They
It can be
whole
false.
list. Yeah.
Right. They are often correlated, but they can also not be correlated. Number 18, the software you are asked to write will solve the problem. So this happens a lot when you get not more in your early careers, but the more details you get as a programmer, the more likely that they are to be wrong. Ideally, somebody will come to you with a problem and some suggestions about how to solve the problem and give you the freedom to figure out the actual solution. But this is where you can get in trouble, where technical managers often get in trouble. They give too much context and too much ideas. Like, oh, well, right, like here's the problem, here's the solution, and here's how to implement the solution.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that last piece will be wrong. because the code has changed or they're imagining it wrong or something. And you need to be very aware that that can happen.
This seems kind of similar to number 10, like the project will solve the problem. I guess there's the nuance between the project and the software, but my software developer brain ties the project to the software.
Yes, that's a good one too. The project is more than just the software. If you've worked with operations groups a lot, then this will become more normal. But a lot of times you're going to write software so that the operations people can do their jobs better.
Mm. Yeah.
Or like if you're writing tools for humans, it's like, oh, well, the project is to get, like we have this problem, like refunds for something. And to process refunds, we need a human to say, to just look at the original order, the return, whatever, and click yes, whatever. Right. And so the software that you're writing is the screen and the button that the human is going to click. And if the screen is wrong, right, like if they've asked you for the wrong screen, then the software doesn't matter. Also, if people are imagining the screen, like just that the humans have the capacity to do these returns, right? You could write the best screen in the world, but if you don't intend to hire enough humans to process the returns, it's not going to work.
Got you. Okay, that's a good differentiation between the software and the project. I like that. Because the software could work and still not solve the problem because the software is intended for a group of people to execute, and you don't have enough people to execute the software. So that's right. An interesting way to put it.
I guess I've so internalized that one that it no longer even occurs to me that would have been a good one. The project is more than just the software that fixes the problem.
You can write excellent software that solves problems, but if there's no one to implement that solution,
yes.
the company dies. Interesting. Okay, cool.
I worked at a company many years ago where their default solution was to hire a bunch of humans to do things manually. I'm like, this is a manual process and it sucks. And we're just going to hire people and they're going to burn out after 6 months and then we'll hire replacements. And it's sad. It's sad. And what was worse is I looked at the numbers. I was like, gosh, you're right. I can't, I can help with the margins, but most of the stuff, you can't write software that's cheaper than the humans because it's just a really, there's a whole lot of pieces and you need human judgment. And, as soon as you say, well, I have to have a human sitting at the switch.
It kind of reminds me of the Amazon factories where you just have people, like there's a lot of machine automation because we can do a lot of that, but there's still some sorting, that pattern recognition that humans are better at, and they'll put them in different buckets and the job is monotonous. And, I've only heard terrible nightmare stories about it, but it's, there's not a software thing yet for it, and the humans kind of suffer. It's brutal work.
Right.
Mentally
it's
brutal
brutally
work.
Boring work. It's not like
mentally brutal work.
Abusive, yeah.
Well, I would say it's borderline abusive. There should be a human rights violation. Some of that boredom. I don't know, that's a separate topic.
Well, maybe in the AWS, maybe in the Amazon factory, but this is just, your job is to sit at a computer and look at like 5 screens and then say yes or no.
Yeah. Still have opinions about it, but we'll put this on the shelf for. Right, next one.
Next one. The software that you are asked to write will make the project a success.
These are getting kind of similar.
Yeah, these are similar.
Yeah.
And then lastly, writing the software you are asked to write means you are doing a good job.
So
this one's a little different.
That's a really good one, actually.
It's a great one to leave it on.
Yeah.
The more things that are in front of the developer title, senior, staff, whatever, the more of those words and the higher level those words are, the less true this is. Writing the software that you are asked to write, if it's the wrong software, you are not doing a good job.
100%. If you don't ask those questions, in my role, if I'm not asking those questions and we're just writing the software asked to write, then we'll most likely write something incorrect. And if you, again, like if you don't solve the problem the customer is talking about and you write the software you're asked to write, then you still did the wrong thing. And that's a hard thing to understand from, like I was mentioning, the junior perspective, because you're like, well, I closed all the tickets. I marked off all the acceptance criteria. I literally did every single thing the ticket asked. But who wrote the ticket? Another human being with a flawed sense of what the actual problem should be. And the higher senior level you are, the more it's kind of on you to make sure people are understanding that the acceptance criteria is not set in stone. It needs to be
Right.
something that's like fleshed out by the customer, changed if we realize we were wrong to begin with. And then, yeah, I think we're in sync for that one.
Yeah, like I was involved in a project a few months ago where I consider my role in the project was a success. The software solved the problem. I consider my role in the project a failure because I failed to get the project on the right track, and so the project was much harder to implement than it should have been.
Gotcha.
And
that's all I've got for that one.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah.
I think we should. Well, no, I think we should leave it here. But that was the
20.
list. That was 20. Plus, number 21. Projects are more than just the software. Even software projects are more than just the software. Mm-hmm. It includes, the people who are going to use the software. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.